you ever experienced imposter syndrome? It's a word that we talk about a lot, but what does it feel like for you when you experience it? We're going to talk about that. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker, and in this podcast, we talk to all the most amazing people because we want to learn what they have learned in their careers so that we can take it and apply it to our own careers and our own lives. Because while a smart person learns from their own mistakes, a genius learns from the mistakes of others. So all the geniuses that listen to this podcast listen and can learn to either avoid the mistakes completely or fail through them faster, because sometimes you just got to go through it. So this episode is going to be a bit different than previous ones. This is a case where I myself experienced imposter syndrome. I had interviewed a businessman that I've talked about on this podcast before, JT Foxx. It wasn't my best interview. I was nervous. I don't know, I think back on it, like I was trying to impress him. And so I was trying to be what I thought I needed to be in that moment instead of just being myself, which at the end of the day, that's the best version of us, is the true self, the true authenticity. So I had this moment of like imposter syndrome when I listened back, even in the moment, trying to make it work and knowing that, okay, I've got a short time limit here. I got to get some questions through. I want to do a good job. But oh gosh, I'm not at this level. So I had all these imposter syndrome creeping up. I had limiting beliefs creeping up, self-sabotage. I mean, all the things that I help my own clients with, I still have to work through them too, because every time you complete kind of one cycle and level up, you're still going to be dealing with the same issues, just in a different format until you finally and ultimately put them to bed. So the interview that I'm about to share with you was actually filmed nearly a year ago, and I was too ashamed to put it up. I thought, oh gosh, this is not reflective of who I am. And yeah, I had shame around it. So that's the thing about shame too, right? Is that shame is such a isolating emotion. When you look at the David R. Hawkins map of consciousness, where he actually, everything has a frequency. So what David R. Hawkins did is he found a way to measure the frequency of emotions. And he put together an entire scale. You can Google map of consciousness, emotional frequency, David R. Hawkins, all those things should bring up the map for you. And when I say map, it looks like an inverted triangle where the biggest, highest vibration emotions are at the top, where it's the widest, and then the lowest emotions are at the bottom. And, it's interesting, when I first started studying the map of consciousness, is you would think things like anger and rage would be some of the lower emotions, but they're not actually. Anger is kind of not quite middle of the road, but it's closer to the middle than it is to the bottom. And that's because anger is typically an emotion that we share with others. When we're angry about something, we're telling our friends, we're posting about it on social media, like we're, writing some scathing review. There's different ways that we're expressing this, but it's not something that we typically keep to ourselves. But the emotions that we keep to ourselves are fear, shame, and guilt, with those being the three lowest ones, shame and guilt being the two lowest. I did have some shame around this interview that I'm going to share because I didn't feel like I handled it the way I would have liked. I gotta do the work myself, just like I have my clients do. And I am human. I put in the work just as much as anyone else does. And it's like, okay, it's time to share this. But I've grown through that the last 10 months since this interview was recorded, and really come to work through to that place of, you know what, it's okay. It was a learning and growing experience, and I'm glad I went through it. And I just rewatched it right before recording this piece, and it's interesting to kind of hear it back of how much I was trying to put on this front of look how smart I am. I think it's something that I think a lot of people, especially high performers, have to go through, is this idea of being smart was my identity for so long. That's what everyone would say, like, oh, Catryn, you're so smart. Of course, it was Katie at the time, because it's a whole nother story. But I was Katie until 18. And then when I went to college, there was like 6 other Katies. on my dorm room floor, and everyone just called them by their roommate's name. And so I was like, no, that's not for me. I'm going to switch to Catryn, which is my given name, which is Welsh origin. Again, I'm going so off track with this. I hope you're still staying with me. So anyway, that's what people would always tell me is, oh, Katie's smart. Katie does well in school. And that is when you hear other people say things about you, it starts to develop that sort of frame of reference that you live in. But it's someone else's box that they're constructing around you. And we don't always recognize that we're putting ourselves in these boxes or allowing these boxes to be built around us. And because we don't necessarily see it, I mean, like, it happens so slowly. It's that slow frog boil that over time, it's just who you think you are. And I've done a lot of dismantling of, what are those kind of beliefs that I hold to be true, and looking at them and examining them from sort of more of a third party perspective and saying, is this true? Is this true for me now? Is this helpful for me now? Yes, it's true that I am smart, but that's not all I am. It's not the only piece of me. And for some reason, whether it was through nerves or, yeah, it was nerves. I don't know what else there could have been. It was just nerves, let's be real. I felt that I had to go back to that kind of comfort zone of staying in that place of intelligence and coming from a place of being smart. And, he calls me out in it, as being a know-it-all. And that is the dark side of trying to lean into that being intelligent as your identity, is that it can come across as a know-it-all. So I love that you guys will get to watch this interview finally. And please, send comments on kind of what your thoughts are and, moments where maybe you have not shown up as your authentic self and what that was like for you. I think the more that we can share the things that we do find shameful or have guilt around or fear, the lighter it becomes. Like, I don't have to hold on to this anymore. I can let this out into the world, and it's no longer something that I have to hold and bear the weight of myself. And it really feels good, even just talking about it right in this moment and kind of getting it all out. So love to hear your thoughts on on what experiences you've had in this area and what you think of the interview itself. As always, I love hearing your feedback and comments. So without further ado, it's been a much ado, but not about nothing. Ado about a very important stuff. Let's get to the interview.
JT Foxx, welcome to the show.
How are you? Good to see you.
It's great to see you. And I've been in your orbit for about a year and a half now, and I've noticed a few patterns, and I wanted to kind of dig into them a little bit. So one of the patterns that I've noticed, and it's really a paradox, which is ironic that you have the Paradox Museum, but the paradox that I've seen is between the balance of persistence and coachability, which are two things that you talk a lot about. And so for persistence, it's all about never giving up, right? Striving, keep moving forward. And then coachability is a lot about letting go of a lot of the beliefs that you've had. So what is kind of your take on this, and what have you seen with your clients?
I mean, I own Paradox, but I still don't know what it means. So that's an ongoing thing. And so if you explain what that paradox is between persistence, whatever you said, it sounded like I was in class and I didn't do very good in school, and coachability. I think, if you never quit in life, you never lose. And if there's no such thing as a self-made man or woman. So I don't think it's even a paradox. I think most persistent person are coachable because they're not like, hey, I'm a persistent person, but I'm not coachable. I think it's not a paradox. It's not a contradictory statement. I think it's a similar value system of what it takes to succeed, because there is no secret or formula or system to success. Like it's, the relationships, the skills, the marketing, the branding, the sales. So, but also too, you can learn everything there is to know, but if you're not willing to be coachable, do this, and not learn from your mistakes and take the advice. And if you just quit after a few failures, you're never going to make it. So I don't think it's a paradox. I think they're all intertwined.
And I can absolutely see that, but I think it's more on places where I've heard you say to people like, I've told you to stop doing this. Why do you keep persisting?
Yeah, these are not persistence. Here's the thing too. If someone keeps doing the wrong thing and you don't listen, right? If you tell your children, stop doing this, right? Stop like they keep doing it, that they're not persistently, that's not persistence. That's just uncoachability. That's just like complete disregard for what you're saying, right? The word persistence is, I have a goal and I just will not quit until I get it right. You sort of define persistence as, you just keep doing something and you're not listening to me. So in a way, you're persistently being a know-it-all. You're persistently being a loser. Persistence is actually a positive word. You just happen to add a negative word to it. So I would say more like uncoachable versus coachable, not persistence, because you have now single-handedly changed the definition of persistence.
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that people can interpret things, and
no one has ever said you are a persistent know-it-all or you're a persistent asshole. You're just persistent, right? And so it's like everybody just says like, I persistence. Someone says to me, "Hey, JT's persistent." That's a positive. I've never heard anybody use the word persistence in a negative like way. Like, more like if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result, that's insanity.
Insanity, right?
Yeah, that's not persistence. For the record, for the record.
Well, I think there's many different words that can mean the same thing. But moving on,
I think the audience will agree with me on this one, but who knows? Maybe I'm not. So I next time someone like, you are so persistent at failing, like, you know what I mean? Like that. So, but I guess everyone can define however they want. That's the great part. But maybe I will Google the persistence definition as you.
Well, because there's persistence, there's tenacity, there's relentlessness, and they all have a different flavor to them. And that's what's so great about language.
But none of them have a negative connotation.
Some people do. Some people think persistence as in pest. I've heard that many times.
But then no one's ever said they're persistent as a pest, but they finally agreed to them. Nobody said, "Oh, they're persistent. I did not do business with them." Right? Let me see what the definition is so we can read it for everybody here.
Yes, let's settle this.
By continuing to do something or trying to do something, even though it is difficult or other people want you to stop. So, right.
And that's where my question comes in with coachability.
Well, I mean, listen, I think coachability is most people want to try and do it themselves. They want to spend money. They don't go to someone like you to get the help. I use this example. You're a golfer and you think you're going to read every book on golf and every virtual on golf and ask everybody advice on golf and go to the driving range and then say, when you win, you're going to get a coach. You're never going to win ever. Right. Even if you get a coach, though, there's still not a guarantee you're going to win, but at least you're going to have a better shot. But I think people, it's like, I'm going to do it for free, then I'm going to get the help. But the way you do it got you to where you are. That's why people need to contact you to get coached, because one moment, one deal, one opportunity can change your life and your business forever. And most people want to get the coach after they become successful, which they never do, or they get it towards the end where like they've tried and failed everything and the morale is already self-defeated.
Well, and it's a good point that you bring up the coaching piece, because you've coached dozens, thousands of people from dozens of countries. I meant dozens of countries first.
I have clients in 104 countries and 26,000 clients. So a lot of people. I
don't always say the numbers the right way, but a lot of people, and they've paid a lot of money for your advice because you've done so many great things, but then people don't always follow the advice. Are there certain characteristics?
I mean, isn't it the case though? Like your children, you give them advice and they don't follow it. And then one day they come back, I wish I had listened to you. I think it's, but if you take a look at the greatness of people, we've had Phil Jackson at my event that you were there too. Yeah. It's like, how do I become, like, what do I need to get to better? And a lot of people don't have that nature. That's why most people don't succeed, like you or like me, or, you're coachable, I'm coachable, you get coached, I get coached. I've spent over 3 million in coaching because I don't want to make the mistake. I want to get the shortcut, meaning tell me to do, what not to do, or how to solve it rather than trying to solve it myself, which ultimately we can't. And even if you know the answer and you have 1% doubt, you're getting that coaching to have certainty and certainty. So, I'm 100% with the strategy, which a lot of people don't.
I thought you were going to continue with, that seemed like an abrupt ending. I didn't really expect that, but that's okay. So
well, I gave you a whole answer, and then what do you mean, like abrupt ending? I made my point, and then you not like my answer. Maybe you should answer for me. I'll be like, all right, here is the cat show. Here's the question, and here's how I would like JT to answer his definition about persistence in there. I feel like this is like a debate show. You're lucky I like you. I get offered, thousands of podcasts. I always say no, 99.9%. But for you, I've known you for a long time. You're amazing and you do great work for your client as well. But I just I feel like I'm in a relationship and I'm married and I just have to agree with everything you say, which is why I'm not married. But thank you. So it's called the cat show. You need to answer the way she is, and you need to end theirs too. She's just giving me some signs,
Well, I know you like to debate. I thought it'd be more fun than just answering questions.
you want to debate one of the best debaters in the world. Is that because the way I see it, I think I'm up for nothing the way I see it. But again, maybe I'm selfish. But I don't think you're going to have any successful person say persistence in a negative way. And at the end of the day, if you're like, so on the next show, call What is Persistence? And then you can interview other guests.
All right. One last question for you. You've said a lot that women make better business decisions than men, but yet so many women aren't in business. There's definitely this balance.
Well, actually, that's not true. Again,
so not as successful.
Maybe not because women choose not to be as, for example, should there be more women billionaires? Yeah, there probably would be. But what's the difference between $1 billion and 100 million or 50 million? There's not much that difference. Also, too, unfortunately, there's a lot of men who, unfortunately, don't want their spouse to be more successful to make it look good. So the spouse is like, I'm just going to stay here. There's no point. Also, too, there's some point of you build a successful business, you're worth $20 million, right? Well, there's a sacrifice to get to 100 million. And that sacrifice would be family and children, which a lot of women say, you know what, that's not that important. And so, 95% of the people who work for me are women. My CEO of all my companies are women. I prefer partnering with women. So if they really wanted to, there would be more women billionaires, in my opinion, and there'd be a lot more people. But women don't define success by money. Money is a game, and men are like the number. It has nothing to do. And so women have this innate art of patience. Men are like, give me. Women just give by nature, very nurturing. But there is a lot of women who also quit too soon, and they would never quit on their children. They quit on their business and then will blame the fact that they have children. And I always say the hardest business in the world is to be a mother. For every business you have, for every child you have, it's like 3 businesses. So much harder. And women have to take care of their spouses, their business, and their kids. Women are just this amazing strength. I could never do what they do. That's why I have so much respect for them. And a world without women is a world would be screwed big time. Which I think there should be also more women leaders. I think there should eventually be, a president that's a woman. But that's also a lot of responsibility, a lot of stress. So women got it. So,
well, I appreciate this so much, JT. This has been a lot of fun.
My pleasure. Great interview again. It was nice arguing with you, but you're lucky I like you. So, thank you.
I appreciate you.
All right, you made it through. What are your thoughts? Something that I didn't want to say at the beginning because I didn't want to taint your experience of listening through that is one of the things I noticed is listening back. My first question was what I see in my mind as persistence versus coachability. And what I was really meaning there is I won't even explain that first. Just as he was giving his answer, I was being persistent and uncoachable in continuing that line and questioning because I didn't feel like I got the answer that I wanted to have from him, which this not how these interviews work. It's not me leading them or guiding them. It's about me providing a space to see what comes out and then directing the conversation from there. So I listened back and I think, wow, I was being pretty uncoachable in that moment and pretty persistent about it. And that's, it's the idea, I think, that where I really kind of struggle just to, bring this full circle and close this loop is that, we do say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But for me, I think persistence is doing maybe not the same thing, but it's still going. So it's almost like insanity is doing the wrong thing over and over and expecting a different result. And persistence is doing the right thing over and over until you get the desired result. And so I feel like it's kind of a fine line, and maybe that's just my brain and how my brain thinks about it. But I do see like coachability is being able to, and here's again, this is the Catryn perspective of this. Coachability, sometimes for me, I get coachability and adaptability. I feel like those are a very fine line for me. And I know in coaching that I've received is because I am so adaptable and flexible in the way that I think and can just be very mutable in that way. I mean, adaptability is my, if you know the Clifton Strengths Finder by Gallup, it's my number 2 strength, right? So it's something that just comes really, really naturally to me. So sometimes when I'm being coached, I can become too coachable where I am giving up parts of myself in order to do what someone else is suggesting to me. And then I'm giving away my own magic. Just because it works for someone else doesn't necessarily mean that it's what's right for me. And so I think that's where I also get the coachability piece of, I'm really good at listening to the advice, but I'm not always good as the discernment of which piece is right for me and which piece is right for someone else. Because that's the thing, we're so individual and unique, and what worked for one person might not be the same block steps, the stepping stones to get to the result, but we want the same result, and maybe I just take a different path to get there. So anyway, love your thoughts on it. As always, I appreciate you listeners for being here. I'd love to hear your thoughts as always. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to rate the podcast, like it if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and as always, share it with your coworkers, your friends, your colleagues, anyone who you think might benefit from this. And please send me an email. Let me know what you think about this. And please connect with JT Foxx. He has a great community of amazing people that he brings in. He hosts incredible events all over the world, and really can bring some amazing people together and help you to think through some things that you might not have thought through before. I'll have all of his information down in the comments for you to check out and to come into his community. I hope to see you there. Until next time, everyone, take care.